And this is our new base. So let's talk about how we got here. Hello everyone, Thranxes here, and welcome back to Stationeers episode 7, where things have taken a quite different turn from where we left off, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So in the comments, I believe it was way back in episode 2, Liam had asked if there were spaceships in the game or if you could build in space, and I realized that I had not played the space mode. Now the space mode was listed as a creative mode in the menu, so I was apt to not pick it by design. I don't generally play creative modes, but I came to realize it's not quite a creative mode. It's maybe this game's version of a creative mode, and we're going to talk about what it is and what its differences are in this episode while we get acquainted with our new base moving forward, where really all I've done is all the stuff that we've already done in past episodes, but in a package in space. So the first thing I noticed when I got into space was that there is no gravity, right? Unless you're in a room that's closed up, there's no gravity at all. So that can lead to some really wacky encounters, kind of like this. All right, so we'll just take our stuff right out of there. Nope, nope, I need the iron. Iron. Oh, no. Hold on, hold on. Don't float away on me. Whoa, whoa, easy does it. Put the copper back in there. No, no, don't bump them. Okay. Okay, now let's make ourselves some gas tank storage. We just need one more, and then we'll be on our... Oh, no! Oh, no! No! Oh, son of a gun. It's going, too. It's going. Got it. And we're going to need to put this back in our backpack. Yep. I got you. I got you. No! Don't open. No. Gotcha. Woo. Oh, that used up a lot of propellant. Oh, our AC unit's in a tumble. Or even stuff that happens like this. Oh, too fast! Too fast! Too fast! Ooh! Oh! Darn it. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are projectiles and meteorites, and it doesn't seem like anything that floats away can get enough escape velocity to leave this little area, so it generally comes back at the center of this little asteroid grouping to include our ship. So nothing really seems to get lost, but it will come back as a projectile and hit your stuff. Oh, oh, my air conditioner. Oh, it's in a flat spin. I can't grab onto a handle. Oh, it's taken me so far away. No, no. Oh, it's always a tough call. Oh, I can't grab a hold of it. Come on. Got it. Oh, it's a tough call because the auto lathe was running. No, the auto lathe was running. Oh, we were just hit by a meteorite and oh, turn off the auto lathe. Turn it off. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And it's just more debris. Stuff is going everywhere. Oh, it's going to be obstructing the solar panels soon. Oh, my goodness. Oh. So once I got started with this creative mode, I realized pretty soon that it was not really all that creative. You don't have unlimited resources, which you do have resources easily identified by these asteroids, but it's a grab bag as to which ones are there. They're hard to see when they're shadowed, and it's not infinite. You will still eventually mine up all the resources in this area, even if they are plentiful. The second thing I noticed about this creative mode is while you can fly in 0G, you are bound to the floor while you're inside of a structure, which is why I realized I can't build a base in space without building a room and an atmosphere, because being in 0G all the time means you use a lot of propellant. And as you can see, my propellant is actually getting pretty low. And in fact, my waste tank needs to be emptied out as well. So while that's happening, let's go ahead and I will introduce you to the base so far. I guess it is a space station since there are no engines or any part of it that is a ship. While we're on board the ship, we're going to go ahead and open our mask because the atmosphere is breathable. Not quite 1 atmosphere, but darn close to it. All right, so this is the landing area here where you can see we have batteries, which we actually need a new one. So let's go ahead and take one. We have 5 solar panels that are charging these 3 batteries, but they're not they're not automated on a computer, actually. They run on a console that commands all of them at once, and I have 5 solar panels, as you can see. So the idea is that we don't use that much power, so if I just point my 5 solar panels where the sun is, where they can pick up their maximum charge for a bit, whenever I think we need it, or whenever I'm walking by the panel, 80% will get it a good amount of charge for a time, and then we'll eventually stockpile up more energy than we use. Here at this locker, we have a lot of our stuff for construction, and we printed a tool maker mostly for spray paint and such because my consumables locker went off. So down here, this is the construction area. Here we have the electronics printer, the auto lathe, and the hydraulic pipe bender, which I try to keep them with their own materials in them. Oh, we took a hit. Okay, so as you can see, micro projectiles and stuff that's tumbling around in space as it builds up speed and hits us. We lose little bits of pressurization here and there because our frame is not as good as it could be. So in here we keep the iron, in here we keep the other materials, which we used a lot of them. There needs to be more smelted. So printing these in a room is a calculated endeavor, even though I could make them out on a deck, out in space, without an atmosphere, or at least in a room. What I found is if you do them in 0G, you end up with, situations like this. And so I generally try not to do anything in space, out in space, unless I have to. Okay, now through here is our little hallway to our pressurization room. Now in this room we're actually running, okay, hold on, what's happening here? Filter pollutant. Okay, so what we're doing in here is this is actually the room where we control all of our atmospherics. It's small, it's a beginner setup. We're going to talk about it and what it all means here as we continue the tour of the base. Okay, so this console is for anything to do with the activation of the big furnace, which is what all of the red items are for. And then white is for oxygen, although this one feeds the big furnace, as you need a mix of hydrogen and oxygen, and we'll talk about all that. This connects the 2 rooms via 2 passive vents, whether you want to isolate this room from its air or not. And when you do that, obviously you can close these doors, causes the red light to come on, so that somebody else knows you're in here messing with the atmospherics and not to like pry the doors open with a crowbar. All right, we'll turn that back off. We're not messing with that. This portable air scrubber we actually use, you can connect and deconnect it from this gas tank system. Connect and disconnect it with the wrench tool. And it will pump whatever gas it has to this pressure regulator that will regulate 5,400 kilopascals into whatever is in this canister. And you can see here, let me grab our handheld tablet, that this tank is, oh, I've got to pull it out. Hold on. So we'll put this canister, it's 5,200 of X, which is chlorine or pollutant. Because again, talking about the difference in space where it's not exactly a creative mode, is that you have all of these gases that come off of the ore when you're smelting it. So for example, when you're smelting iron, or gold, even just in the arc smelter, it gives off chlorine. And since you need your jetpack so much in space, you have to very quickly be able to take the chlorine out of the air, or at least have an air you're willing to waste. And I figured, why not, with the pollutants, into a canister for your propellant. It doesn't actually have to ignite, it's just pressurized air to send you flying all over. So we'll leave the pressure regulator on and it should start pressurizing this canister. 4055, that's pretty good. This one is 1934. This one could use with a bit more pressurization. And that's because we're dealing with pollutants right now. So the pollutants, and I believe these are empty, right? This one is volatiles. So the red is hydrogen and the white is oxygen, which you can see right here, O2, hydrogen. Okay, because the way this works is this is for using the furnace in a pressurized environment. It actually doesn't take a lot of pressure. Let me turn my light on so we don't get shadows over here. So then the proper burn that you want for oxygen to hydrogen is 1 to 2. That's 1 oxide to 2 volatiles, generally just stuffed right on the top here. Will get your furnace going. However, in any kind of an atmosphere, the 2 will sublimate immediately. So we've fed it through a mixer, which will do 34% of input 2. It's a little hard to see with my light. Let me turn it off. Right. Input 2, 34%, which is this one, the oxygen, and then input 1, 66%, which is the hydrogen, or the H2. So it's 2 to 1, and we pressurize it through the pressure regulator. Now, it only takes about 200 kilopascals, and that is before you put in your ore. Now, if I put in my ore first, right away, it's going to already add pressure to the chamber, because remember, the chamber is pressurizing everything all together. So you want to pressurize your fuel into the furnace first at the proper pressure, which is about 200 kilopascals of a 2 to 1 hydrogen to oxygen ratio, and then you put in your ore, turn off your regulators to make sure you're not still feeding fuel, and then you should have a good reaction. This vent is to use in tandem with the doors so that we can vacuum all the air out of this room so there's no chance of a fire. And these dark painted valves here, these release to space. So if this has a pressure or a temperature you want to get rid of, there's a vent mounted kind of high above the frame here. This will feed the furnace directly to space. And it's the same with this, because we don't want lingering pollutants in the tube when we go to canister oxygen or any other thing we want to canister. This valve here, which is sort of hard to see, and this one as well, will vent the entire contents of this pipe into space. So now there's no more, you can kind of see it wisping around here outside of our little window. So now this tube is empty and there's no more pollutants here. And if we wanted to say bottle oxygen, or let's say we wanted to bottle hydrogen. So when we want to bottle hydrogen into the canister, what I do is I go ahead and I shut the doors, and then I close the valve, and then I would start throwing around some volatiles, which I don't have any. But if I did, I would start throwing around some volatile ice. I would let it sublimate into the air. I would change this filter out from pollutant to volatile. And then I would run this for a time while it scrubbed the air, set this pressure, turned it on, and eventually this would pressurize canisters at about 5,400 kilopascals full of hydrogen too. You can also do the same with oxygen, although I find the easiest way to get more oxygen for your tank is to actually just put it right inside here. So the portable oxygen tank that you start with, these are the only 2 things from the beginning I was able to save, actually. Although I've seen the consumables one floating around out there. Okay, it's not going to let me grab it, and now it's all over my stuff, which of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? Here, let's pull the cooler back out of the way. I need a storage room just for this stuff here. Grab the portable tank. So the portable tank has an opening right here, boop, for your canisters. So the easiest way to fill up your oxygen tank is just to stick it in there until you're out, which we still have plenty of pressure, so that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so now that we've refilled our propellant, let's go ahead and we're actually just going to dump our CO2 into the air here to give us a little bit of pressure without having to worry about it being a 100% oxygenated environment. So now we'll close it and put it back. So we added a little bit of CO2 to the air, but that's okay. It's not that bad. We're going to need a full-blown atmospherics area that will handle processing all kinds of gas, because we're going to have to start working on a garden soon. We're going to have to start growing plants soon. If this game were calculating food and water, I dare say I would have starved by now, and we also need to process all that ore. All right, the solar panels are set up for the next day. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hop outside the station a little bit, and I'm going to continue the tour with the outside of the station. So we're going to turn off all these lights. I actually get away with not adjusting the solar panels that often because I leave all the lights on, except this one. I like to see if I've got a power issue right away while I'm in the airlock. Let's make sure our mask is shut and locked, and we'll kick our light on. Okay, so as soon as you step into a non-room, you're in 0G. So let's talk about the power setup. We've got 5 solar panels with heavy-duty cable running down to 3 solid batteries here, which are fed to a transformer, and then that goes to everyone else. Now, the APCs, we've got 3 of them. We've got the airlock, which is our most important power controller. So the airlock is fed by a power controller that's backed up by a large cell so that the airlock never goes out with the power outage. We have another APC over here with a small battery on the solar power panel. This one probably doesn't need a large battery though, so I'm actually going to swap that out for a small battery, because the console really doesn't use that much energy. And there's no need for a full large cell battery to be in there. That's not necessary. I'm not making everything large cell because that's expensive, and I'm trying not to use a lot of my steel.
0G.
I must have put that one on me because it was the only one I had. And there you go. So now you have a small cell battery backing up our solar panel console. And then we have an APC down here with a small battery that is backing up our door system. So the console that controls the doors and the doors is backed up with this APC. Up here you have the ventilation system. I had started painting it just to make it easier, but then I ran out of paint and realized I didn't want to do all that just yet because I didn't know how permanent this room was going to be. This white tube is our vent that connects passively to the other area inside those frames. Then you have, this is our vent into space. This is our active vent that we use to vacuum out this room when necessary. This vent it adds whatever you're piping into this canister. So like, let's say you were piping oxygen into this canister and you wanted it to come back into the base, whatever was left over, you would flip that valve and it would flush it back into the passive vent system that goes into both rooms, and you would give the oxygen kind of back to the station. That's about the bulk of the tour outside. There's not too much more to look at yet. The name of the game from this point, though, is going to be expansion. But before we expand, we're going to demonstrate a little bit how our furnace system works. Let's unlock the mask and open it. We'll talk about how the furnace system works. All right, let's make sure these solar panels are going to have a bit more charge for a while. And we'll demonstrate it. So we'll make a few different types of ore in the big furnace. We'll demonstrate, the scrubbing the pollutants out of the room with the portable air scrubber, which I think nope, it's on volatiles. So let's change that back to pollutants. Thank you. And probably grab a new large battery while we're at it. And we'll start figuring out how we're going to do the ore. Okay. First things first, whenever you're trying to use any kind of furnace, any kind of forge inside of an atmosphere, you need to isolate yourself. So we're going to go ahead and kick on the console, activate the light, close the doors, and isolate this room through its passive vent. Now, we don't need to vacuum out this room because we're not going to be using the big furnace. That's what the red icons are for. But we do need to isolate the oxygen and everything else, because once we start putting iron in this arc furnace, you're going to see toxin detected. We need to put on our mask and flush it and break out the tablet, and you can see the chlorine is actually starting to climb in this room. That's what that X is on your atmosphere analyzer. You can see we're mostly O2, a little bit of nitrogen, barely any CO2, a fraction of a mole of H2, and now we're up to 5 moles of this X ingredient, this chlorine. Now, the more iron you smelt, the more you're going to get of this gas. That's why we have these extra canisters, although I shouldn't have flushed this out to space, but that's okay. We're going to have more chlorine than we know what to do with, because we're going to smelt all of this. Well, maybe not all of it. We're going to save some of it for the furnace, because we're going to mess with some items in the furnace. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, let's go ahead and grab another iron and just keep this train going, is you don't necessarily want your air scrubber running the whole time, because it's not really necessary, because it'll scrub the air out of the room much faster than the pump can activate it. But we're going to go ahead and do it anyways to give our pressure regulator something to do. So now you can see the scrubber is starting to fill up. If we can look at it, it's starting to fill up with pollutants. Not a lot. Oh, and we're starting to create a little bit of a pressure change over there, pulling all those pollutants out of the air. But that's because we're sealed off from everything else. Our pressure shouldn't get too low, though. We might have taken a projectile hit over in that corner. Let's make sure that is off. Okay, good. So I'm going to go ahead and smelt all of this iron, and I will bring you back once it's done. Okay, so once your iron and gold is done being smelted, you can start with the copper. Now, at this point, your copper doesn't put off any pollutants. So what I normally do is I turn on my portable air scrubber to pull all the pollutants out of the air, and then, oh my goodness, look at all this. It's so delicious. Then I look for a pollutant canister that's empty. We'll take one of these and we'll put it in here to get the process started. And that'll help pull all the pollutants out of the air while we're smelting our copper. It takes a little bit of time, so it's good to start the process. An important thing to note is if the pressure in this room ever exceeds 105, like 110 kilopascals, you probably want to turn on the scrubber and reduce the pressure in the room from all the pollutants, because a high pressure will get through doors and go into other areas. They are not airlock doors. So for that reason, yeah, you might need to run the portable air scrubber intermittently to ensure that your external pressure in the room is low. Don't use the air conditioner the way it works when it is set too cold, even though you might want to cool off the room from the heat you're generating. Don't use it because it inhales the air that is around you. And as you can see, this has gotten trace amounts of H2 in it. It shouldn't be too big of a deal. It's technically 0%. And it's given a bad temperature reading, as you can see, but you don't want any pollutants in there, because then when you turn it on to heat up an area, it'll give those off. So I'm going to smelt the rest of this copper and scrub the pollutants out of this room, and then we'll talk about how we use the canisters and flush this out. Okay, at this point, while this copper is smelting, you can see there is no change to the room. There is no change really to the pollutants inside of the scrubber while it is on. There's no air movement. In fact, it's getting a little bit less and less as this continues to pressurize. So let's go ahead and turn off the portable air scrubber. We're going to keep the copper smelting, but what we can do is we can actually open back up this room once we verify there are no pollutants in the air. Still trace volatiles, but not hardly that many. Mostly oxygen. It's a very oxygen-rich environment. Let's go ahead and open the doors and the vent, passive vent system, and we'll get the pressure evened out in here a little bit. Yeah, it looks like there's a bit more air pressure over here. We can go ahead and, oh, there are trace amounts of pollutants in here. So what I'm going to do now that I've opened up the air is I'm actually going to turn the air scrubber back on. Make sure we get the pollutants out of here. We've used a little bit of our power. Nothing too bad yet. Let's go ahead and, oh, we're just getting power now. Oh, we're just past peak. So let's bump it ahead a little bit so that way, yep, we'll have over a kilowatt for a little bit. Yeah, look at that. We're already back up to 3. I don't think we need a new battery yet. These large cells last for quite a bit. But this tank should be, there you go, 5,400 of pollutants in a pressurized tank, and that is, let's see, this one can be topped off now. And we'll just keep putting tanks in here to be topped off. And then we've got another empty tank, yep. 5400 for, and the reason, I mean, you can use any gas as a propellant since there's no ignition. It's just the pressure of the gas, you know, propelling you through the air, so to speak. So because of that, there is no need whatsoever to use any valuable gases that you might have. So I don't. Instead, I use pollutants because they're really not good for anything else. That's pretty much 5400. That'll work. And then we'll take this one out. Let it get pressurized. And then if you ever have any doubt of what a canister is, maybe because you forgot to color code them, boom, you can always check it with your atmosphere scanner. Just know that you have to have it on the ground. You can't check it. You can't check it on the locker or in the wall. Just food for thought. Practically 5400. And then this empty one here. Boom. So now we'll have lots and lots of propellant. It's going to take a little bit for that one to fill because it has to repressurize the line to 5400. We got up to 4000 right away. We probably could pressurize a few more. There's quite a bit more pollutants in here, but I don't think we need to worry about more than 4 tanks of propellant. I do have a friend that plays on this with me from time to time, but I don't think we'll go through the propellant that fast. But it's very important that you're going to need propellant a lot, especially if you're doing work out in 0G. You will go through your propellant quicker than you might think, and because of that, propellant is one of those things you need to get right away, and the pollutants that you get from smelting iron and gold are some of the easiest gases and earliest gases that you will produce. So building a way to scrub and then pump them into a canister, even without this forge setup, having a system like this with a portable air scrubber that pressurizes into a tank will allow you to get all your pollutants out of the air, and then you have propellant for all of your zero gravity endeavors. Let's go ahead and we'll check the atmosphere here one more time. There's still 0.1 mole of pollutants up here, so we're going to leave that air scrubber on for a bit longer until it's cleaned out. We might even then do the volatile at some point. Even though there won't be enough to pressurize more canisters, we can at least get it out of the air. And then this pump is slow because of a bad setup with the piping. I originally had it where it pressurized really fast, but the vacuum valve, the one that got added here kind of as an afterthought, wasn't clearing out the pipe in between the pressure regulator and the canister, and that meant the canisters weren't coming out 100% mixture. There were trace elements of whatever else was scrubbed in the system. So we traded the speed for the pressurization of the canister for the ability to clean the pipe out completely through the vacuum of space. Now what that means, since you have to be trapped in here anyways, is that I normally do my iron and gold first and then my copper. If we're going to use the big forge, it's a whole other thing, and we're going to deal with that here pretty soon. Yep, that's practically 5400. We're going to go ahead and let it get maxed out, let the copper get done. I'm going to put it all away, and then we will flush this system out. Okay, now that we've got this room cleaned up and all the pollutants are done, we can turn off the air scrubber. We'll hold on to this battery here. At this point, I would turn on the air conditioner. So we'll just put it in there to help get this room cooling down. It's 12 degrees, which is pretty warm, but at the same time, we'll try to keep this room cold because we use the furnace. So we're just going to suck up some of this air here and cool the room down ever so slightly. This canister is full, that's 5400. So again, we're talking about 4 full canisters of pollutants. And there's 5400. All right, once those are all full, let's go ahead and we'll take our own propellant canister out and top it off while we're here. Now this is because we don't have an automated system on demand. Just the fact that you have to kind of be trapped in this room while you're processing all the metals. That's why I wanted to do the gases in the same room. A, because of the furnaces, but also it's just convenient while you're sort of stuck in here. Okay, after that you have all this leftover pollutant in the line. I could continue making canisters and capture it all, but really at this point I think our best bet is going to be to just dump it to the vacuum of space. So let's go ahead and do that. And there you have it. Boom, all the pollutants dumped out to the vacuum of space. So this valve dumps out everything that was in the line, because if it was good air and we didn't want to lose it, if it was oxygen we were compressing into gas canisters, we would open this valve that would flush everything in the line back into the atmosphere. But we're not. It was pollutants and we want to get rid of the leftovers. And on that beautiful note of all these wonderful resources, that's where we're going to wrap up the episode. So this has been Stationeers, episode 7, New Direction, Building in Space. I hope you've had a good time watching, because as always, I've had a good time playing. Thank you so much for joining me, and come back next time as we start to smelt some of the more advanced metals using the furnace, and we talk about how to properly regulate the fuel for temperature and pressure. But until next time, take care.